We'll go to G first. Commission General Regulation 414, LCB file R153-12, Desert Tortoise, Southern Region Wildlife Diversity Supervisor, Cris Tomlinson.
Commissioners, Cris Tomlinson for the record, Wildlife Diversity Supervisor. This is an amendment to our existing administrative code, NAC 503093. And this falls in line with Mr. Sen's presentation, to which it basically would provide for a limit of 1 pet desert tortoise for possession as of enactment. One of the last points on this, CGR 414 allows for possession of 1 as of an enactment, which would be January 1st, 2013. And so it's forward movement to begin to reduce the number of unwanted pet tortoises, but what it doesn't do is affect current people that possess desert tortoises. So if you had it prior to the listing, as Mike Sen said, August 4th, 1989, you're already exempt, and we have that in the existing administrative code, so you don't need a permit from us. And then if after that period and up to now, if you have it through an adoption program, which of course we encourage people to do that, you're also exempt. You can possess tortoises, but in multiple numbers right now. So this is for the future to minimize the overbreeding population and allow the recovery with the Fish and Wildlife Service to focus on a limited number and a targeted scientific strategic framework. There's just too many pets coming in, but this is the state part to move this forward. And the federal laws are a little more ambiguous, so it falls on the states to have these laws and statute similar to the other agencies. Arizona Fish and Game is the same. They have a limit of 1 pet desert tortoise as well. And that's about it in a nutshell. This also gives subsection 2A2 also allows the Fish and Wildlife Service, they already authorized the adoption program. Now this would give them more flexibility, or another method which would allow them to allow people to gift their tortoises, but we're still going to want them to have 1 tortoise, but it would minimize the burden of those tortoises coming down to the Desert Tortoise Conservation Center. And that's pretty much it.
Commissioner Rain.
I just worry about and have questions about, and it seems like the Fish and Wildlife Service has 2 other really good solutions to fix their problem of having too many tortoises. There are 2 solutions they came up with, he was talking about, that has nothing to do with NDOW. Seems likely that's going to resolve at least the vast majority of their issues. I'm struggling with why we need this regulation. And if we need a new regulation, great, but it's always on the burden of, if we don't need it, let's just not. New regulation is bad until proven innocent, shall we say. We don't need extra regulation. Less is better. I don't see why we need this. It seems just counter to everything that's going on in the world. If these things are endangered, a few more in private houses, is that really going to hurt anybody? We haven't been hearing about people being eaten by the desert tortoise phenomenon of too many pets in their house. I mean, what's the point of further regulation for just minuscule gain? Shouldn't even be, unless there's something that I have not yet seen, we shouldn't be dealing with the minutia. It's this teeny detail. Thank you.
We're already working with the approved adoption program, Tortoise Group, and they're one of the most renowned adoption programs. They have really good information on how to care for your tortoise. They're already encouraging people to have 1 tortoise. This is not in statute yet, and so is the San Diego Zoo. They're also part of this program. San Diego Zoo, their wild recovery program, they're also encouraging when people call in to just have 1 tortoise to minimize the breeding. So all this does is back up in statute those educational messages. And we think it's a long-term solution. It's already been adopted by the other fish and game agencies. Arizona's one. It's not even listed in Arizona, but they have an overbreeding population as well. And they have a limit of 1. So
Commissioner Crew.
Yeah, Mr. Tomlinson, I appreciate the discussion, the presentation. I think what you said and what we have before us is an existing regulation with a couple new changes. One of the things you said that was important to me is that it won't be retroactive, but looking at subsection 3, it talks about a person possessing a desert tortoise pursuant to this section shall not possess more than 1 tortoise, so on and so forth. But it doesn't have anything on there that makes it clear that this is not retroactive. Is that something that would be handled purely through the enforcement, or do we need to include that in the language?
if you go down to section 3 on the very last section 3, subsection 3, it says this regulation becomes effective January 1st, 2013.
Thank you.
Okay, any other commission comment? Seeing none, this is informational, but we do have it listed with public comment. Any public comment?
The only card I had at this time was from Karen. I don't see her.
Okay, we'll close that item. I'm not seeing Karen or any public comment, and we'll move on to B.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I still don't get where, in following Commissioner Drew's question, this is effective then. What about the retroactive part? Am I missing something here? I've still failed to see where it says this is not retroactive in this regulation. Same question you had, but becomes effective. Does it say people that have them before that are exempt? I don't see that.
It does say that up above. It says section on the first page, section 2, subsection 2. You are not required to have a permit or authorization. Such a license, permit, or authorization is not required for the possession of a desert tortoise which was held in captivity on or before August 4th, 1989, so they're exempt, or is acquired through an adoption program approved by the Fish and Wildlife Service. So those who have it through the adoption program, which right now we have an online program, so people are registering their tortoises. It's much easier to register than it was historically. Historically, they used to have to come out, look at your yard. Now, all that information's online. So they're exempt as well. And this regulation kind of, it connects to education because we want them to go on that website because it's very good information, and it does have information on there to limit breeding as well. But that's
To not make it retroactive, shouldn't it state, I mean, in your new piece, should not possess more than 1 desert tortoise unless they were owned before that date? I just still don't see that.
I actually, just to answer Commissioner Ring's question, I think it's actually covered under Section 2. The mandatory provisions of Section 1 of this paragraph or regulation do not apply to a person who acquires a desert tortoise specified in subparagraph 2 of paragraph A of subsection 2 of that section before January 1st, 2013. So Section 3 actually kicks in the effective date, and I think Section 2 is takes care of your retroactive.
Yeah, we wanted to make this an amendment to the existing NAC and not rewrite everything. So that's why it's worded this way.
Okay, Ms. Lane, we understand you had a card. We're on agenda item 9G.
Karen, are you still representing the Humane Society on this?
Sorry, actually, I'm Karen Lane, Chair and Commissioners. I'm Karen Lane, and in this instance, I'm in my position as Chair of the Clark County Animal Advisory Committee. The committee right now is looking at, we have a huge animal overpopulation problem here. We've been working on it for the last couple of years in terms of spay and neuter. But one of the issues that has come up recently is the whole issue in terms of the desert tortoise and the fact that we have too many people that think it's great to have 2 tortoises as opposed to just 1. And that's really creating major problems here. So we would be, I would say to you that I think this is really important to keep this to limit it to 1 person in terms of the adoptions. We, are very supportive of that issue to try to resolve some of the issues that we're having right now.
Okay, thank you. No more public comment. Any more comment from the commission? Okay, we're going to move on to agenda item 9B, Commission General Regulations 399 LCB File 148-12, Special Permit, Southern Wildlife Region Supervisor Cris Tomlinson.
For the record, Cris Tomlinson, Nevada Department of Wildlife. This has nothing to do with pet tortoises. So, we have what we do currently is we have biological opinions that are issued by the Fish and Wildlife Service for movement of tortoises out of harm's way in relation. I know you've heard we have a lot of solar development, we have a lot of power lines that come through in relation to those, and that what they do is issue a biological opinion to move the animals out of harm's way. Well, in state statute, we give authorization as well, and we follow those biological opinions, and we want to make sure those animals they can be, tortoises don't move well. Sometimes they're in burrows, so they have to put a new burrow in and move them over, but we want them to stay in the desert if they can. We don't want them brought in or graded as well. So this is CGR 399 basically we currently issue a letter of authorization out of our regional office, but what this would do is have this permit, it's a special purpose permit, flow through our license office where it should be similar to our other permits like scientific collection. It would originate out of our license office. There'd be appropriate forms for the information to be submitted, and that's detailed in the LCB 148 CGR 399. It's very similar to our scientific collection permit, but it would flow through our permit office and allow data that we get. We use the data that they collect. We use it for predictive models for desert tortoise, but having it through our main license office would allow us to get that data. And it's basically it's an existing permit, but it would put it into our license office where we think it should be. One thing I need to point out is there's an omission here on the first page, section 1, subsection 1. It says protected for the purpose of reducing. They omitted of in between purpose and reducing. I don't know, probably I was warned I should submit that for the record, make sure I have a copy of that. But that's the only change to this CGR 399. And that's it. These flow through existing biological opinions. They're existing. We would just have it come out of our Reno office, license office.
Okay, any questions from the commission? Commissioner Rain.
Do we currently charge for this? For those letters?
And no, we don't charge for that, and we don't really have a mechanism. We have a field biologist spend time on those letters of authorization. So yes, this does request a fee of $200, and we looked at our fee mechanisms. High end for commercial permits can be up to $500, and low end is around $20 for some of our export permits. And we thought this is issued to these permits are issued to biological consultants as part of approved projects, like I was saying, solar power lines. So we thought 200 is kind of less than the middle in that range. We thought it's probably reasonable because they're biological consultants. It's not necessarily the general public. They're getting paid. They're trained.
This is project specific. $200
project
for this project, $200 for that project.
For large yeah. And we also have the ability, we do in our existing letter of authorization, we can put multiple projects on these permits to one consulting company to minimize defray those costs. Because you have some consultants here in town that do multiple projects, and we keep them on the same permit, so that would defray that cost. This is just to capture administrative costs through our permit office. It's an annual permit fee.
Any other commission comments? Do we have any cards on this one?
I had no cards specific to this item.
Is there anybody in the public who wants to comment on this? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the commission. No further comments, we're moving on. Item 9.